Awesome. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Welcome to BookHampton and RJ Julia Booksellers virtual event featuring author Richie Jackson, who tonight will be in conversation with authors Matthew Riemer and Leighton Brown. Just a few quick Zoom housekeeping details before we get started. Please ask questions using your chat box function of your Zoom screen. We'll get to as many of your questions as we can later in the evening. Though you will remain muted throughout the duration of the event, a BookHampton staff member is monitoring the chat box, so please send them on over. For optimal viewing, you can use Zoom view functions in the top right corner of your screen and select speaker view so that the speaking author remains highlighted throughout the duration of the event. And of course, don't forget to purchase your copies of Gay Like Me and We Are Everywhere. Links for book purchases will be sent to you in your Zoom chat box. So tonight, BookHampton and RJ Julia Booksellers and Wesley and RJ Julia are thrilled to welcome authors Richie Jackson, Matthew Riemer, and Leighton Brown. Richie is the author of Gay Like Me, published by HarperCollins and named an LGBTQ book that will change the literary landscape in 2020 by the Oprah magazine. He writes the monthly column in Gay We Trust for The Advocate and is an award-winning Broadway, television, and film producer who most recently produced the Tony Award-nominated Harvey Fierstein's Torch Song on Broadway. He executive produced Showtime's Nurse Jackie for 7 seasons and co-executive produced the film Short Bus, written and directed by John Cameron Mitchell. As an alumnus of NYU Tisch School of the Arts, he endowed a fellowship program at his alma mater in 2015 to assist graduates in the transition from academia to a lifelong career in the arts called the Richie Jackson Artist Fellowship. He and his husband, Jordan Roth, were honored with the Trevor Project's 2016 Trevor Hero Award. They live in New York City with their 2 sons. Leighton Brown and Matthew Riemer are the creators and curators of the hugely popular LGBT history Instagram account and co-authors of We Are Everywhere. Historian and activist icon Joan Nessel calls it a handbook for action, cherishing those who risk so much, and a living bridge between our communities of the past and present. Matthew and Leighton live in Washington, D.C., where Leighton is an attorney and Matthew, a former attorney, is a writer and lecturer. Together, they enjoy fighting fascists, spending time with their dog, and disrupting fundamentalists' worldviews. We Are Everywhere is their first book. Without further ado, please welcome Richie, Leighton, and Matthew.
Thank you. I thought she said you guys enjoy fighting.
Well, that is generally true, but in particular, fascists.
Yeah, good.
Sort of prime time for that these days.
Right.
So
yeah.
we're in our element, I guess.
So it's just a niche hobby, and then it's now boom times. Well, thanks for having us do this, Richie. It's an honor.
I'm happy to see you guys.
Yeah. I'm trying to think when we last saw you in person. When were you in DC?
In I think early February.
Okay.
Yeah, Oscars night. So
Oh.
anybody knows that date.
So it's safe to say that a lot has changed since last we
I
saw.
haven't noticed.
What's that?
I haven't noticed. What happened? What's happened?
I guess just thinking about the book. I know this is a kind of obnoxious question because we get it, but the world has significantly shifted. Looking back, is there anything you'd add now? Is there anything you'd change? An addendum now, given the COVID world and the kind of the reckoning that's happening.
Right.
Or does it fit right in?
You know, certainly if I were to go back in and write an addendum, you could make certain comparisons to this pandemic to the, the epidemic I lived through in the 80s, that we all have been, lived through. But there are some parallels you could make and some certainly they're not the same. I would change, maybe I would change or not using LGBTQ if I wrote an addendum, only because I've learned from my son that queer is a positive word. As I write in the book, I can't use that word. I had been called queer so many times growing up, and worse. I think my mother's trying to get in, but you see her ceiling. But my son kept explaining to me, no, Daddy, queer is positive. Queer is a positive word. So I think an addendum would be, I'm more comfortable with that word.
Yeah. Now, no, sorry. I was just going to say, with respect to yourself, or more generally, because I certainly know, and it seems to vary some by generation.
Oh yeah, no, I think I think it's a generation thing. I've just gotten more comfortable saying, using that word instead of LGBTQ, because I've just been learning over the many conversations I've had about the book. The parts of the book that I think are so relevant now are that the vigilance that we need to have, the alertness and the anger of my generation that I wanted to pass on to our son and on to the younger queer community. I have for a long time felt that we've become lulled into complacency by parades that celebrate more corporate pride than actual activism. My old friend Amy is here. I went to my first Pride March with Amy in 1984. They were marches. They were not celebratory parades. We were protesting and fighting for our rights. And I don't recognize these parades. And now that we can have them, I think it's a good time to rethink the entire Pride celebrations.
So I will say that was Christopher Street Liberation Day '84 was 36 years ago yesterday. Just to contextualize. But that also, how you ended it there leads into kind of a much bigger, well, maybe not a much bigger question, but shifting gears. That is this the time? I mean, you said it is. What do you hope for Prides going forward? What do you think we can gain from this moment, and do you think there's actually a chance of doing that?
Well, I think before we change the actual expression of Pride, we have to, and because that's all the parade is, right? Where is the expression. We have to first define for ourselves what we want Pride to be. I believe it needs to be a protest. It needs to be a march. And I think by the way to make it a march again is to go back and redefine what our issues are. Because everybody thinks we've won everything. Andrew Sullivan wrote in New York Magazine that the gay rights organizations should close up shop because everything has been won. It's over. And that is demonstrably not true. And, that's Supreme Court case a couple of days ago was amazing. And I hope it's a bulwark to stop all the attacks on our community and especially the trans community. But it's going to take activism and protest to make that happen. Your book is called We Are Everywhere. We're also everyone. We're every ethnicity. We're every religion. We are in every culture. We are in every state, county, and town in this country. That means every fight is our fight. We are immigrants, we're refugees, we're people with disabilities, we are dreamers, we sit in the pews, we sit in the jail cells, we're online for theater, and we're on the bread lines. that means every fight is our fight. So if we start to think of immigration reform and voter suppression and gun control, because gun violence adversely affects our community at a high, the Black trans community at a higher rate than the general public. If we start to think of those issues as LGBTQ issues, we'll get back to protesting. We need to widen what we think our issues are.
Yeah, right. Because I think what gives our community the potential for such huge power, really, it also gives us a much broader responsibility than a lot of underrepresented communities. And like you were saying, that we are everyone and everywhere. And so we are in all communities, but then we also have a certain amount of influence and power in all those communities.
Right. Well, so part of that is that because we are everywhere, and this is something we talk about a lot, that we're also, as the three of us can attest, are white, cisgender, able-bodied men of relative or full-on privilege, and too often there has been a conscious effort, and part of our work as historians is to reveal that the implicit or explicit bias that's gone into the telling of our stories in order to frame a narrative that
from the very beginning,
right, that goes toward the victory narrative, that goes toward it's this inevitable march to progress. That is, but what you're talking about when we keep trying to emphasize is that it's easy to say none of us is free until all of us are free. It's very different to internalize that and organize your life around that. But once you do, it becomes much easier to pick our issues because it's just oppression everywhere. It's just
right.
Right. And I think actually some of the large Supreme Court cases, like the recent one, I mean, while it's great and they are good steps, I think I get a little concerned by them because, I mean, this isn't just, well, one, we can't just rely on those in the upper echelons of power. And two, it's much more than legal. For instance, the violence that is just rampant I mean, that there are laws against that already. Now, I mean, it should be better protected with hate laws, but I mean, it's societal as well.
Well, first of all, just to go back what you talk about the Supreme Court, the mistake that our community makes is that we think Anthony Kennedy and now Gorsuch are our heroes. They're not the heroes. The heroes are the activists who are on the street. They are the ones who get them to swing the gavel our way. It does not happen without activism. And, I forgot the last thing you said about violence. The 26 trans women of color were killed last year, 14 already this year.
Yeah, that we know of, and what you said. I mean, what you said in the book. One of the. I mean, that some of us are legal. That's not we're not safe.
We're not right. I say in the book we're legal, not safe.
And there's such a faith by so many of us in, and that's one of the things that I hope is changing in this moment. That there is such an ingrained faith in this experiment, America, that the Supreme Court will save us, a vote will save us, something will save us, when in reality what has always saved anyone is radical activism.
Ourselves.
Yeah.
Look, I'm from the generation that of gay men and women and the trans people of color who really started this movement and then moved into AIDS and saved the world from AIDS because of activism. It was the Larry Kramer and Peter Staley and these incredible people. That's activism. They're not doctors. They're not scientists.
There's something, and I mean, of course, we mourn and honor Larry Kramer, but there was also something kind of romantic that his passing coincided so like almost like to the second with the explosion of cities that all of us, I mean, like Larry passed, and then it was like his spirit just took over the city. Like,
Oh, yeah, you know, I think what happened was that we needed a receptacle for all his anger.
It could spread all around
And everywhere in America.
Yeah, because I think it was either the 1 or 2 days after George Floyd was murdered that I think that Larry passed. So
Right.
I mean, so that's a question. I mean, so Larry is a good example of a lot of things. I mean, but that this bearing witness of shortcomings. I mean, the work of consciousness raising is not easy. So calling out oppressiveness, not just beyond the queer community, because that's relatively easy. Though it can be difficult in the microaggression, but within our community, kind of some of the stuff you talk about with the it's just one part of me. I don't like to think about it that much, and how awful that is, but also how deeply ingrained it is. And do you find yourself get less popular? I mean, because do you take it upon yourself in wherever, I mean, the Hamptons, wherever, New York City, wherever you are, to actually confront that? And if so, do you find folks like applauding your book, but not actually grappling with the rage and the anger that's in it?
Yeah. I think a lot of it depends on the age of the reader. I get a lot of responses from men and women my age who are saying, I wish I had this book when I was growing up. I would feel much better about myself if I had this when I was younger. A lot of people who are reading it are responding, I need to be a better member of our community. I have been falling in my responsibility to my community. So that's been great.
Yeah.
I do get a lot of pushback on the people who, when I say being gay is the best part about me, it's the most important part about me, and I think it's a gift. And I think if you say, oh, gay is just a part of me, gay doesn't define me, I just happen to be gay, you are diminishing the gift and breaking your own heart. It's also politically, it's political suicide. Because if you're saying to yourself, well, gay is just a part of me, it doesn't define me, that means you're not on the streets protesting, and you're not walking into that ballot box thinking about us first, being an LGBTQ-centric voter. If you diminish who you are, you're not taking up the space that you should in this world.
Yeah, I mean, over the past, 5 years, and I think we got there mainly through history, and for me at least, history and therapy. That
is the gayest sentence I've ever heard.
Well, and the Golden Girls. So history, therapy, and the Golden Girls.
Golden Girls did a lot to it.
Because it's too, well, it's, I guess, I don't know, it's countless number of steps, but too broadly. One, coming to that realization that this is my queerness is all of me. And two, that there's nothing, that's great. And the pushback I get from whoever I get, they're wrong. I'm right.
Yeah. I think it, no, sorry.
On just how empowering that is, and there's some condescension that comes with it. And we feel this a lot because, like, I don't want, I want people to feel this kind of liberation and it's of course, if you're not in a place where you can, if you're struggling, if you're not safe, right, that's a whole different conversation. And to have someone who looks like me and has the privileges that I have, talking to someone being like, well, why don't you just tell everyone? That's different, and that's not okay. But when we're talking about, I think, our demographic.
But I think you're both also talking about, I mean, it's not necessarily about coming out, but you're internalizing and sort of, you know, your self-worth, I guess, your true recognition of yourself. And so it's not just about feeling the power and the uniqueness and greatness that being queer does affect every part of your life, but I think it's also just trying to ignore or just internalizing not just the homophobia that we all deal with on a daily basis, even if it's, you know, benign or so, but just the overwhelming heteronormativity as well, which you know, might, you know, no malice involved there typically, but it can very much make a queer person feel out of place, whether it's school or work or home. And
The entire scaffolding of America is constructed for straight people. I love that.
Thank you.
good words.
Yeah, I mean, right. So that must get pushback again. Like, and I'm talking about from gay people. It's hard to accept that
I
notion.
have been told by many people, straight and gay, that I make too much of being gay. I make everything's gay. And for the uninitiated, I'll explain what they're really saying to me, which is make your gayness smaller until they're comfortable with how gay I am. That's what they're trying to do, to diminish me and to demean me and to put me in the corner so that they're comfortable. I won't be diminished by anybody.
Nobody puts Richie in the corner. No.
Reference.
The whole world, all the air is cisgender and heterosexual, and so when they are giving up, they feel like they are being drowned if you take even the slightest amount of their air, and they're able to push
right. Like you take that, right? You're taking something away from that.
Right. And it what is so infuriating over and over again, just because having to tell folks that you just don't see it, that the whole world is cis heterosexual. Everything around. I'm not
It's
always
male heterosexual.
right, cis male and white, but that this isn't constantly harping on anything. This isn't constantly. This is just sharing the space that
Right.
you have, and it rings tinny in your ears because it's new and unfamiliar.
Right. Also, there are two reasons it's very important to take your space and how important being gay is in your life. One is it's all your potential. It's your otherness is such a gift to see the world differently. We're 4.5% of the population. That we didn't just come out defective. We're not like, oh, the 4.5 they're broken.
And we're the top.
We've been chosen to see the world differently. So if you make that so in every part of your life, imagine the potential you could have, the destiny that you're in store for if you imbue all aspects of your life, personal, work, with the idea that you've been chosen to see the world differently, to look at the world differently, to feel differently. The other thing you have to always keep in mind, if you're keeping your gayness in its proper place, in its special, unique beauty, you also have to be constantly aware of how America sees you, how America treats you. And I call it in my book, double vision. You have to have, as a queer person in America, double vision. On the one hand, how does America see you? How are you treated? You have to be constantly vigilant about your safety. And on the other hand, you have to always keep in your other view your beautiful gayness. And you can never let the two collide, because you don't want America's view to soil and spoil your own sense of your beautiful gayness.
Right, and I think that's why it's important to, I mean, your book, and then you generally being told people that you're too gay. I mean, because it can't just be about oneself, I think, because, I mean, something I think about, and I know it's a question I'll never be able to answer, is who exactly would I be if I hadn't been closeted for a lot of years, if I hadn't been told, why do you have barrettes in your hair when you're little, and I mean, I don't know. And I'll sometimes see an old picture and I'm like, boy, I was a flamboyant little kid. And then somehow I fit in and then passed for a lot of years. But so if there aren't people like you out there telling other people, you need to be as queer as you are. You need to allow your children to be as queer as they are. There are going to be a lot of people like me that I'm not sure they'll ever fully know their true and genuine self.
And
I do think I think it's important that people, even if they might not agree or if they might still be unsure or closeted, for them to hear me say constantly, being gay is the best part about me. It's the most important part about me, because it will give them permission. Even if they don't move all the way to where I am, it will give them permission to take more space. Also, the little kid who wears barrettes and is closeted, they now have your book. With your history book is so extraordinary because it's not homework, our history. What it does, and I talk about you guys in my book, what you do for people is to show them the long line of extraordinary human beings they are now a part of. That they don't need to know the history because they're being tested on it or they have to eat their spinach. It will make them feel more powerful. It will make them feel like they belong. That's what you guys have done with your book.
with those, thank you very, very much, because that has been our goal and will continue to be our goal. I mean, we have this origin story so I mean, we were together, we were both out and relatively connected to the gay community in DC, which means we went to gay bars and we were at Lambda Legal, and because we're both practicing attorneys then, and we went to the unveiling of Frank Kammeny's headstone in 2015, and in the course of an hour at that memorial, it became abundantly clear to us that we didn't know anything about our history. I mean, that what we knew was, Stonewall, Anita Bryant, AIDS, yada yada yada, marriage, and it's just from the get-go, learning the stories, and this, it never stops, is what you said. We are more complete human beings. We are more connected human beings. We realize our responsibility more, and we realize the path to liberation. And it's the greatest gift other than just being queer, realizing what that means and what our history entails.
Also, that kid with barrettes in the closet, if he had learned about Bayard Rustin when he was in elementary school, when he learned about Martin Luther King and the I Had a Dream speech, I'm not so sure if he learned that a gay black man organized that march, that he would have stayed in the closet as long as you might have.
So now going back to something I'm struck by, looking back through the book, so we never, and this is a whole other conversation, we never thought about having kids. It wasn't our thing.
There's still time.
No, it's not this. I'm far too selfish. Ask our dog.
We've been easy to take care of.
But my dad issues, like it's but that the uniqueness, it just never occurred to me of being a out, proud gay man of your generation. So I mean, in a time and place where this idea of being legally married, this idea of being legal, and I really want to stress that, parents, because of course we've been getting married and we've been parents for eternity, but of enjoying those civil privileges and then getting the joy of having a gay child, and watching some of the things that you described, like the flirting between an openly gay son and another gay.
You know, I don't like that word openly.
Oh, but okay, yeah, and we can talk about that too. I get okay, all right. So
No, listen, I wanted
the difference between him, but if you had to watch your son kind of surreptitiously, secretly flirting, and you would know what it looked like, but he's doing it openly. I mean, that's what that means, and it is admirable. It is something different. But though I don't want to we can talk about that. But but just what an incredible experience that must be.
It was so thrilling to me. First, I had hoped he'd be gay. I wanted him to be gay. So it was so thrilling to me. And then to watch him, you know, I think about the difference for him and me, to not start with secrets, to not start lying, to not start with all of the things that so many of us in our community, the beginning of our queerness is always in the dark, is in the shadows, is in the closet, is lying and secrets. Our son didn't start with secrets. I don't know, I can't imagine the freedom as a queer person to start without secrets. I think it is so liberating and so thrilling to me.
And I guess one of the considerations that, and I don't know, I mean, I have no, but like so much of what I identify with the queer community and what my queerness and and I think it comes across in your book too, is the struggle and is the secret and is the, and I sometimes wonder about, well, for one thing, it's not that we're wishing that away, because that's silly. It's never going to go. I mean, there's always going to be, but how do we make sure that that's translated, that the gains, that the change doesn't automatically turn into complacency and apathy, but instead you use the new space that's been created to create more space for those coming up?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that I never wanted to be straight. I never wanted to be accepted by straight people. So, you know, this, I kind of miss everything being in our own community. You know, I say in my book that the struggle will make everything feel more worth it. But there are always going to be struggles. We have been, you know, think about what we go through as queer people. We disappoint our parents. We're at battle with our government. We're stigmatized by religions. We're bullied in our childhoods. We're erased in our classrooms. We've survived a plague, and still we stand up and come out and say, this is me. That is the spirit of an extraordinary species of people. We're always going to be battling those things. But the spirit, what makes, when we come out, we've already achieved so much. That spirit cannot be lost from our community. That's the spark that makes everything else happen for us. So we have to stop assimilating and stop trying to be accepted by straight people and stop trying to erase our community lines, because I think the beauty is to have our diverse, mischievous community. I don't want that to go away.
Yeah, and because I was thinking about this, and we talked like the amount that you say something like the difference between there's a lot more gay friendly places than there are gay places,
right?
And for so many people, that is a gay, queer, and non. That is progress. That is what the goal was. And for some of us, it's just like, are you in your mind? Like that you know what? Because for me, coming out, I was one of those people who bought into the lie that, I don't need gay friends. It's just the same old Matthew. I don't need gay friends. I don't need gay books. There's no difference. It's just the same old me. I just happen to like guys. And it took a while before realizing, like, holy shit, I desperately need gay spaces. I desperately need gay friends. I desperately need gay literature. I desperately need gay music. And it's hard and harder to find them. And I know that our culture is a questionable thing, but we have to have gay bars. And
Right.
When I was growing up, when I went to NYU, I would shop at a gay bookstore, the Oscar Wilde bookstore. I would eat at a restaurant on Christopher Street called Ties, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
I bought clothes at All American Boy on Christopher Street. So there was an entire community, and you understood what you were fighting for. We weren't fighting to erase that. We were fighting just to be safe, just to be whole in the eyes of the law. The lack of gay space, I think, is a real loss. To not feel like a majority any part of your day is really damaging. When you go to a gay bar, when you went to a gay restaurant, or when you walked on Christopher Street in the 80s, you felt in the majority where you never felt any other time in your life.
And I think the fear I have is that as we see purely gay queer spaces, the number diminish, that this new generation, which is coming up more confident and comfortable in the broader society, perhaps, they're not even going to know what that feels like. They might be fully comfortable, or at least they think they are, in a gay-friendly place, but they don't know how great it can be to have the power of finally being in the majority, sort of. And
I think it's connected also to diminishing your own queerness, because if you don't think it's as important as I think it is, if you don't center it to your life, then you won't feel like you need that. Then you will be happy to go to gay friendly places. You will be perfectly happy to see movies that you're not in, that you have to squint to try to make yourself believe you're going to watch two men when it's really a heterosexual couple, or what, however you identify. You're going to have to rehear lyrics from songs that aren't about you. If you read books that are not by queer writers, you are going to completely marginalize yourself by not finding yourself in straight culture.
Yeah, and it just and you're further marginalized. And again, I'm not one for hope. It's not my thing.
But that's a clear.
But I've of late been intoxicated by hope, because maybe the kids are all right. Like that I think there's a deep investment in the power structure to diminish, and I think this was true in the 60s, true in the 70s, to diminish the power of young people, because what the secret is that young people actually are the revolution. And over the past few weeks, and of course it started before that, but it's really coalesced that this generation that we keep poo-pooing and say, oh, they can't get out of their phones, like they've turned those phones into kind of, well, I want to go to a protest too, but I can never figure out where they are because they're doing it on apps that I don't know, and it's just they're everywhere, and they are pissed off, and they are not accepting the stupid canned answers for politicians that we have accepted for so long, and they will get results.
I agree, but this might be 54-year-old me speaking, but my concern is there is another step that we need to get our young people to do, which is to vote. And every election, it's like, oh, will the young people come out? Will the young people come out?
Yeah.
And if they don't get the exact candidate they want, will they come out? So this I don't think voting is everything, and I think protest is really important. But part of change does include changing the people who are oppressing us.
Right. And I think this November is sort of the ultimate test of that, because I mean, this world, unlike any past administration, I mean, politics, because it all stems from just the shit show that goes on day after day in the White House, that, I mean, it consumes everybody's lives. You can't hide from it. So if that's not enough to get people out to the polls, I fear what would be.
I always want to say, and Leighton and I have this discussion sometimes, that this narrative that we're already buying into, that goddamn it, it better be, you know, this time young people better do it, and black people better do it, and this this time white people who got him in there better do it. Like it needs to be like.
Let's remember, 60 million people voted for him.
Yeah, like it is their fault.
Yes, and specifically the educated white woman who tipped it over for him. But we do have to remember, even when we get him out, he has gotten 200 judges appointed with the help of Mitch McConnell. We're stuck with the judges, whether he goes or not.
Yeah, including Gorsuch.
We're stuck with his voters. They're not going anywhere either.
Not with that attitude.
Maybe we can get them to go back in their racist closets.
Well, listen, I would like to. I live in New York. I'd love to secede from the Union. You know, that would be my choice.
Revolution should never be out of the question, and that's the thing. And what's so
you know the problem with revolution. We talked about this. They have all the guns.
Right. Well, so it doesn't have
to work.
Bloodless revolution is a thing, but it's all. So I guess where I get so concerned, and what I think is one of the tensions is that, and it's starting already. Of course, and as I saw somebody tweet this the other day, that if Dr. Angela Davis can say she is going to go vote for Joe Biden, then whatever Bernie Bros woke ass, you can go vote for Joe Biden. So we are happy to say we are voting for Joe Biden. Whatever, but like the emphasis that gets put on that, it necessarily is going to be followed by a great deal of moderate liberals who are like, well, things are fine. And thank God we got that guy out of there. And it's going to be people.
Parents will take over now.
Yeah, it's going to be people like once again being in the position of having to be unpopular at parties to be like, no, nothing is fine.
That's what I'm talking about, widening the idea of what our issues are. You know, there was this unbelievably offensive op-ed in the New York Times a couple of days ago, calling for the gay community to make a deal with the religious community that we won't get all the rights.
Won't be perfect, right? Yeah.
I mean,
you know, if you accept that you can't foster or adopt, maybe the religious organizations will let you have some rights.
We've been doing that, yeah.
I mean, you know,
absolutely offensive.
Yeah, you just can't. There's no compromise to be had when you're talking about people's their most basic rights and the
nobody
harm
is giving rights.
Lacking those rights does. I mean,
you have to be very. This is what young people have to understand. We're not given rights. Our rights are only blocked or denied. They're ours.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to be willing to forego the sort of easy thing, or those that might be available to those with the most privilege, in order to, and you hold out and you use whatever power and privilege you have until the whole community is also moving forward. I mean, hopefully to the end. But
if we're going to use LGBTQ, if that's what our community is called, then that is not stripes on a flag just so everyone feels represented. It's our bond. It is our chain link that we are locked together, and we rise and fall together. And we see that Trump administration are coming for the most vulnerable among us. And if guys like me think we're safe because, oh, we're not trans, the trans fight is our fight. They're also going to come down the line. They're going to go T, B, G, L. They're going for all of us.
Yeah, you said, I mean, that is something we, like, part of kind of our consciousness has become, like, how quickly, and we did some study about this. I mean, kind of tracking the language of our collective, that, you know, for a long time we were the gay community. After a while, we became the gay and lesbian.
I remember when we were the gay community.
Yeah, and then we became gay and lesbian. We, for a short time, we were gay, lesbian, bisexual, but then we went straight to LGBT. There's never been a time when we've actually said transgender all the way out. And so for us, saying LGBT for so long, it just rolls trippingly off the tongue. And the number of gay men in particular who never, what you just said, who never think about the fact that I don't get to just say that. I don't get to just say I'm part of the LGBTQ community without ever actually doing anything to earn the right, the privilege, the honor of being connected to my trans siblings, being connected to my lesbian sisters. If I'm just gonna, like, just, you don't, it's not just a monolith. Like, you actually have a responsibility to all those communities.
Also, it's also our strength. I mean, it's our intersectionality is our strength, and we ought to use it. I remember when we became lesbian and gay, it was bisexuals in 1987 in Washington at the march. And I remember that big banner because I was with Harvey Firestein and he was right behind the banner. And I was like, oh, look what we are now.
Yeah, yeah. And it's our strength and our obligation, and one just always has to be conscious of it. And it's an amazingly freeing thing once you accept that. But there's just so much pushback about.
You're right, but yeah, and there's such a danger, I think, because when you're talking about compromise or incremental advancements, I mean, it's typically not that, well, the whole community gets some incremental benefit that they didn't have before. It's that, you know, the white cis gay guys do, and then, you know, they sort of back off, and they leave the rest of the community who.
Did you know the story about the Empire State Pride agenda in New York State, which was this, you know, a political gay organization, and once marriage passed, they folded up.
Right. Yeah.
So they left all the trans right fights to other organizations. They left the foster and adoption fights to everyone else, and they just packed up and went home because they got marriage.
Yeah, and when you have the knowledge that they gained along the way and the donors they got to know and everything else, you're right. Don't just pack that up.
Yeah.
Use that.
And it's a real problem. I know it's a real problem, and what we see with history telling is that story's not told. And so you take someone like Sylvia Rivera, who, you know, now that she's, and I say this flippantly, but it's true, now that she's been dead long enough, people can start to take her back in because they can shape her into the mold that they want her to be. I mean, she hated the Empire State Pride agenda, and when, you know, Sonda didn't get done until the past few years. That's because Empire State Pride agenda cut them out. And those stories, but, you know, when we start to tell those stories, it's like, yeah, but they did good. Like, they got married. But, you know, we have to tell those complete stories in order to get a complete future.
Yeah, there's a fear, I think, to criticize any aspect of our community at any time. But
I say, bring it on.
We make mistakes, and we need to learn from them and build upon them. But, you know, we don't want to do that.
So I think, are there questions, or what time is it? I don't know. We could talk.
Yes, we do have some questions that came in. Let's see here. So what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to someone who's looking to better educate themselves on the LGBTQ community?
I know 2 books you could buy.
Absolutely.
Matthew and Leighton's book, We Are Everywhere, will give you this vibrant history of our community. And, my book will walk you through how I've lived 36 years of gay history, and also how I gained this confidence as a gay person, what I did to gain this good gay self-esteem. So I would definitely buy your guys' book and also follow you on Instagram, because it's a daily history lesson.
Yeah, I mean, that's
LGBT_history, right?
yep.
And I guess I'd just add that I think make sure to read and listen to other letters in our alphabet. So read, if you're a gay man, read Leslie Feinberg. And I think also, as we were talking about with the intersectionality that we need to embrace, that, I mean, I'm going back a little bit, but Audre Lorde or James Baldwin or somebody who, maybe their focus might have been more the racial struggle, but they were also queers, and we need to, learn, and learn about all communities that are underrepresented, to say the least, in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I what we tried to do with our book is the starting place. It's the starting place that we wish we had had, and hopefully people can jump off into. So yeah, basically start with our two books.
Yeah.
Who has been your biggest influence in helping to find and amplify your voice, becoming such trailblazers for so many looking to find themselves in their own voices?
Well, I had the very good fortune of meeting Harvey Fierstein when I went to NYU, and in so many ways, he raised me to be a good gay citizen. He taught me, everything there was to know about the gay community. He showed me how to lead with your heart, with purpose. I became an activist because he was. So I had the great fortune of Harvey Fierstein as my mentor.
Wonderful.
I'd say in terms of history, it's always a toss-up between Frank Kameny, who kind of established, in our view, I think established visible radicalism in terms of, even what Richie's saying, that it is a gift. Gay is good, that we are right and you have been wrong. And Sylvia Rivera. I mean, I think Sylvia Rivera is kind of, to me, she embodies so much of the promise and failure of the queer liberation movement, and so much missed potential because of ingrained transphobia and racism and classism and not listening to radical voices because they make us uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think with Frank Kameny, there's such a confidence in what was right and wrong and immoral and moral, and he talking about somebody who wouldn't compromise. and then I think along with Sylvia is somebody like Larry Kramer, who showed that, I mean, you don't have to be the passive little queer in order to assert yourself. I mean, you're allowed to be angry. Maybe he was a little bit too far over that line. I don't know, but he certainly made change in the process. So
that's an interest. One of the things we should say is that the two of you and the three of us want everybody to be angry.
Yes.
We want to leave people with that. It's a time to be angry.
Yeah. No. I mean, emotions are the powerful driving forces. I mean, it's what gives the right their power. They're always angry and filled with hate, and it's all right. We can be sad and let that drive us sometimes, but anger is something we all have. You just have to know how to channel it.
There's this insidious notion in liberalism that love and anger can't coexist, and that that you can't be seeking justice and goodness when you're angry, but that's absolute nonsense. And queer people and black queer people and marginalized people of all stripes have shown that over and over and over again. They've been written out of history because it makes people uncomfortable. They are not given the space. Sometimes they are actually just erased in real life. But that is something, and I read it in your book, and I hope that folks get it from the history that we try to amplify, because it was something I desperately needed, is that, no, you don't just be like, it's not necessarily that you're just anxious or depressed or that you feel different or whatever. You're angry. Be angry. They are valid reasons. Right. They have tried to erase you. Everything in the world is trying to invalidate you. Be angry. Sorry. Yeah.
Flipping tables.
I love it, and I think that's actually a great place for us to leave off now at the end of the event. Like Me and Everywhere are two fantastic books that if you haven't already gotten a chance to, please do visit RJ Julia, BookHampton, or Wesley and RJ Julia, and pick it up. You can come into the store, yay, or you can order it online. But a huge thank you to Richie, Leighton, and Matthew. Thank you for being with us this evening, for sharing with us, for your courage and your strength. It has been such a great pleasure being with you tonight virtually. And to our wonderful guests, thank you for tuning in and joining in on the conversation, for supporting our authors and your local independent bookstores. We appreciate you wholeheartedly. Happy reading all. Stay safe and good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.